3 years ago when the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom got announced at E3, I never thought that it was going to drop at just a perfect time in my life where I really needed the support of a video game. And there are games that come and go. There's many, many great games, but we always think back to particular games in our life, whether it was our very first game we played when we were a kid, or another life event that we can point to. A lot of people point to multiplayer games at college, and maybe Mario 64 when you were a kid, or one of the Mario games. We always have these tentpole games we can point to, be like, oh, that was a great memory. You got nostalgia for it in some way or another. But there are also the games that come around at the time when it might be a breakup with a relationship. It might be a loss of a loved one. It might be something like I was going through. And for me, that was just Tears of the Kingdom. It just fell at the right time. And I don't know if any other game that come along would have gotten me out of that rut more than Tears of the Kingdom did. Just with the amount of excitement I had for it and just how it exceeded my expectations in every level, it was exactly what I needed. And I've never been so thankful for a group of developers than I am for Nintendo for releasing this game. This was just an absolutely tremendous game that I am so happy exists. And I look forward to playing it for many more years. So for the first couple of weeks, I played it a heap. I played it for 75 hours. I know that's pretty much amateur for a lot of people out there who probably put, I don't know, 200 hours or 100 plus hours at this point. But I only played it for a couple of weeks, honestly. I played it for a couple of weeks, 75 hours, put my time into it, beat the last boss, did 132 shrines, did a bunch of side quests. So I did heaps within the game, got plenty more to do. I still got a lot in the underground to do because the underground scared me a bit, so that's probably where I spent the least time. But I put a bunch of time into it, and it really sort of helped distract me and immerse me in the world of Hyrule and keep me happy and sane, which was great. It really was. It's exactly what I needed. But for me, there was so many aspects of the game that I enjoy the most. I think straight off the bat, it would be the story. The story really blew me away in many aspects. There were times where I was wrapping up the game at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, all right, it's 3 o'clock. I got to go to bed. And I was doing certain things. Well, look, I'll just do this certain point. And 3 o'clock comes around and a story moment happens and my jaw just drops. And it wasn't until the cutscene finishes, I just realized my mouth's open, thinking to myself, my God, did that just happen? That was one of the best moments in the Zelda series. It was awesome. And, obviously I'm not even going to allude to it for spoilers and stuff like that. I actually want to do an encore just discussing this moment in a spoiler-filled way. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in hearing that without the spoilers. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this have probably experienced a lot of it, but I know I hear people also haven't even barely touched the story, even at this point, 200 hours in. I don't know how you did that. I was so just excited by the story. I couldn't get enough. But it just shows how different people like different play styles. But yeah, the story blew me away. I loved it from the very start, stepping into the chasm, going down with Zelda, getting the story, what's been going on between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and how that uncovers, and Ganondorf zapping your power away, smashing the Master Sword, and Zelda going back in time. The intrigue was set off straight away. I wanted to know what's happening, and up in the Sky Island where you're doing the tutorial, I was actually doing that relatively fast. I just wanted to see what happened. But of course, you don't really get that much context. You go down to Hyrule, and you can do whatever you want there. And for me, I just got smashed with my 3 hearts so much, one hit so many times. So a lot of my time in between story was grinding shrines. I was grinding shrines. So I maxed out my stamina. I think I got 36 hearts by the time I wrapped up the game. So I was very focused on doing that and side quests in between when I come across them. And I think the side quests in this game are really good. Some have great stories and some are just fun to do and really tie in well to your abilities with Ultra Hand. And I really enjoyed that. So the story was top notch and has some of the best moments in the Legend of Zelda series. Some of the best moments in Nintendo outright, straight off the bat. And honestly, for me, like probably, I don't know, top 3 best moment in gaming ever. Like truly, it's up there for me. I haven't really heard many people like just like rave about the story. It's been a lot about a lot of the other aspects for the more gameplay orientated, which is fair enough because these games are just focused around gameplay and then the story comes around later. But I was truly just impressed with the story. It might not be for everyone. It's not linear. You've got to piece it together. You might need context from Breath of the Wild. And I do understand that some people might not be like big Legend of Zelda nuts like me. Like I'm pretty tame to some compared to some people, but I was really interested in all the minutiae when it came to Breath of the Wild, what happened before Link Awakens, and what happens in between, and even like Age of Calamity, the Musou game, where it has like a different take on what happens if a little event happens differently. I loved all of that. So when it came to Tears of the Kingdom, I was just eating up every little bit. What Ganondorf's up to, what the temples are doing in Tears of the Kingdom, and what are you doing there? And when I found out what you're doing in these temples, what the main goal of getting these sacred stones was, I was just like, I was blown back by that. Being a big fan of Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, there's so much to love when it comes to just the story and lore, everything to do with the game. But I think most people, they're just going to be there for the gameplay. And the gameplay is vastly improved from Breath of the Wild. Not really like the sword combat. Obviously, that's very much the same. Pretty standard. In some ways, that's one of the aspects of the game I would actually like to see improved in another game. Because I really enjoyed, like in Twilight Princess, how you could do like the different maneuvers that you learn from the previous Link, where you can roll around them, hit them from the back, jump over them, and hit them while you're doing a forward flip over them. I thought like all of those combat mechanics were a lot of fun. And even the motion controls, how you use was it a shield bash? You do the nunchuck forward and you knock them off and you can hit them with your sword. I thought that was a lot of fun. So I'd like to see a few more dynamic things like that into Tears of the Kingdom. But a lot of the dynamic sort of stuff with the combat comes from, using your abilities. So Ultra Hand, where you can sort of make anything in the world, with a lot of people doing some really impressive customization within the world. For me, it's very much just like put down a log, put on a sail, and that's my boat. Or I just put 2 fans together and a what do you call it, a steering mechanism, and you're able to fly around. Like I just do the basics. But it's awesome seeing people online just like making automated mechs to just go and take down these bases. I thought that was really smart how people are using it, but it wasn't really what I'm into. And even going into the game, that's the part of the game that really sort of made me a little bit anxious. Like, oh God, I don't know if I want to be doing this. But Nintendo did a really good job sort of making it accessible for anyone. And even to the point where you can just make something that's utilized, that you can use, and it doesn't have to be too over the top, but you can also just make just incredible things. I think Game Explain made like a massive stick where you could just climb it all the way up to an island. It's like stuff like that. It's like the Switch hardware can handle that. That is nuts how this game is optimized. It's just insane. But it is just really impressive just what this game's done. And I loved the exploration in this game. You're coming across something all the time, whether it's just a point of interest that's nice to look at, or it's enemy camp, or it's a shrine, or it's a well that you can go down into, or it's a side quest. There's so much going together. And what I do find impressive about it as well is that it's not just... A lot of games are fun. They have a good loop where you can sort of see the loop you go on. And oh, look, you do this thing, you get money, you come back, you buy upgrades, and then rinse and repeat. It's a loop. You can see it. You can see the game design right in front of you. Whereas, you can see the game design in Tears of the Kingdom too. Obviously, you're going to shrines, you're cashing them in, you're getting up your hearts. But apart from that little upgrades circle, and maybe the weapons too, how you're constantly getting them and fusing them together, it's a little bit more unclear because you're constantly going in between side quests and exploration and hunting and gathering. Like you're always doing something different. It's not always in the same order. It's just whatever order you come across it. And the world always seems to reward you depending on where it is. Whether you're doing a Korok, you're helping them find their friends, or there's always something to do. And that's a criticism that Breath of the Wild got for being too empty, not enough to do. But I never got that criticism personally for me with Breath of the Wild, because I didn't see why it's a bad thing having an open space and just like running through it and gathering some things and maybe hitting a fox, and then over the hill you might see something there. But what's so bad about this world that's been just desolated and people trying to rebuild? I don't understand why that was a bad thing. But I don't know, each to their own. I'm sure there's a game for everyone out there, and this is just one of them. Everyone has different tastes. But personally for me, I really exploring. I really like exploring open green areas. So I guess it's kind of right up my alley. Even to the point where the first time you go to Rito Village and it's all covered in snow, I was like, oh God, I don't want to go here. So go back to the other area. It's a lot of sunshine and rainbows over there compared to some of these other areas that have been affected by snow, or volcanoes erupting or whatever have you. But yeah, just a tremendous game. There's so much I can talk about, and I'm sure a lot of it's already been talked about before. But what I found really interesting is just the fact that Nintendo, they looked at what people were doing with Breath of the Wild when people were playing that. And you can say that in Tears of the Kingdom, because in Tears of the Kingdom, you are doing things like pro players were doing in Breath of the Wild. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, they use stasis, they throw themselves like on a rock onto like half the map. But in this, it's just like a simple gameplay mechanic you're being taught in the tutorial area, where you just like go on a glider and you just glide down. And that would just be like a massive, like awesome thing to do in Breath of the Wild. But you can do just so many more impressive things in Tears of the Kingdom, which is a lot of fun. But then it also steps it up. Like those pro players, they're doing even more incredible things with more impressive contraptions that they've made, which is interesting. I hear some complaints about the controls. The controls are a little bit cumbersome, but I never had a problem with personally. But I can understand like why, like you hold in L, hold down, and then you can select something, then throw it. Like there's a lot to do just to do some simple actions, but there was so much sort of compact into the controls that I can't really come up with a better use of the buttons myself. Even to the point where at first, it's a little bit strange because you're jumping on the X button. Typically, games make you jump with the B or A button, but I do see why they put it on the X button. Just get it out the way. It's the thing you're using the least. And the fact that you can't remap it as well. I can imagine just like doing like a simple remap of like just something like jump or even swing your sword. It would like throw it off. Like if you're when it comes up with a tutorial too, like B down to throw something, it'll throw off like maybe simple actions like that. So, but there are definitely some accessibility options that need to be added to Nintendo games. They are by far the ones who are the worst at adding accessibility to their games. And I say that as someone who's like, this game helped me through a very tough time. But there are people out there who have their tough times as in like, they've just broken their hand, they've broken their arm, or maybe they just lived with a disability since they were born. I would love people with those disabilities to experience an amazing game like this. And Nintendo makes it hard for a lot of their titles. And this conversation sort of came up to me back in 2018 when Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee came out. And there was no sort of accessibility options just to throw the Pokeball with a button or a joystick in handheld mode. No, in handheld mode it was fine. It was on the TV. You had to use motion controls. And typically that series was really great for people with disabilities because it was just selecting stuff with the D-pad, pressing A or B, and that's it. And you're able to, use different controllers or just use a finger to do the movements or, whatever appendage you have. So that's something that really stood out to me. So I would love to see Nintendo open up their accessibility because their games are made for the biggest range of people out of any gaming company. So I would like to see those options added, but it's also something they got to put a lot of thought into, but I don't know. Is that such a bad thing? Put some thought into it. But apart from that, man, I don't have any sort of gripes with the game. The game looks and runs great on Switch. I absolutely loved seeing the developers sort of froth over like the physics of the bridge, how it all interacts. And I actually came across that shrine where you've got to like attach the bridge to the other side to walk over it, and you use Ultra Hand to manipulate it. And for anyone that hasn't done the shrine or come across those bits, it's basically like a bridge. Every plank is unique, and you can pick up each plank with Ultra Hand and then attach it to the other side. And when I did it, I'm like, well, this is really impressive. I don't think I've ever like done this in a game. Like just had this bridge that's like you can pick up any bit and attach it or whatever. And to me, that was impressive, but it wasn't until like I actually heard from actual game designers who were just like, is this real? Like on any console, PC or anything, it would be impressive. But the fact that it's on Switch, which is a 6-year-old piece of hardware, where the main chip powering it is the Tegra X chip that was in devices in 2014. So just super impressive just technically. And like I mentioned before, it really sort of changed my tune when it comes to Nintendo hardware. If they can make experiences like this on hardware like the Switch, look, if they've got talent like that, they can make it on a toaster. Honestly, they can make games on whatever they like. But obviously when it comes to third-party support, that's when it gets tough, because a lot of developers don't have the luxury of being like, oh, look, we're going to just master this hardware and we're going to just make an awesome game. It's like they've got to make games across all of these platforms, and when it comes to fitting it down onto Switch or another future Nintendo console, that's when it's tough. So it might be a trade-off there. But just a really tremendous game, and I cannot sort of emphasize how impressive it is and how important it was to me. It's one of the most important games I've ever played, just with how much enjoyment I got out of it and the time of my life that it hit, and just a real tough time that it got me through, and it ultimately led to me being able to be a better father, son, and husband. So just a massive gratitude to everybody at Nintendo who's been a part of this game.